Okay. So we will call a meeting to order here at 3:01 p.m. And as it is a Brown Act committee, we'll get rid of some of the formalities here. First thing I'd like to do is take a roll call of the members. We'll start with Member Kinney.
Here.
Trustee Cervantes.
Here.
And I am here, Trustee Andrews. We have two people absent today, Jim Vitale and also Amy Lyford. But we have a quorum and we will proceed, although there are no voting actions on this one. We have a quorum. On the consent calendar, there's only one item to approve. Actually, I think you've already told us, Diego, that there is no public comment on non-agenda items. Is that right?
That's right. We don't have any on our email or our public forum.
Okay. As a formality, if there's any approval or reordering of the agenda items, now's the time to let me know. It's very sparse, so I doubt that's the case. Okay, hearing none, we will continue. And that is, we will vote in the consent calendar that has one item in it today, and those are the minutes from our meeting in October. So if there's no objections, I'd like to get a motion to approve the minutes from our last meeting.
I will move.
I'll second.
Okay, great. It's been moved and seconded. All in favor? Well, I guess I should take the verbal roll call. Trustee Cervantes?
Yes.
Trustee Kinney? I'm sorry,
Yes.
Member Kinney. And Trustee Andrews is a yes vote. All right, with that, we will go ahead and get started. You can see there's not much on the agenda, but I know there'll be lots of questions on the new business that we talked about. And Nikki, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Trustee Andrews. So good afternoon. We don't have anything for the CFD committee to review and make a recommendation to the board this month, but being that we have not met as just the CFD committee since October, we thought it would be good to have a meeting today and get an update from our municipal advisor and bond underwriter about where we're at in terms of the bond issuance process. So I'll turn it over to Doug Anderson with Urban Futures.
Thanks, Nikki. We did include a brief PowerPoint in our packet here. So we just want to talk about where we've been, the steps we've taken, and then what the next steps are. We're getting very close to the finish line, which is exciting. So initially, after our team was selected, we started on draft documents. That was back, almost 6 months ago. BB&K prepared draft documents. We got them to the point, I think in August or September, where we were going to get a bond rating, and then we took a slight hiatus while we nailed down the project fund size that we were going to target. And I know there was lots of discussions and still have been some discussions about that, but we settled finally on a project fund amount of $24 million. In talking with Mike Cavanaugh at Hilltop about structuring the bond issue, at the time we went for board approval of the documents in December, we selected a par amount that, when combined with the expected bond premium, and I'll let him talk some more about that, but those two items combined would equal the $24 million. So we did put a maximum par amount of bonds, just the bonds themselves, of $21,125,000 in the resolution that was approved by the board. So that's our cap. Mike has talked with his pricing desk, and the way they're going to structure these bonds, there will be a premium on top of that 21.1 million. And when those two items combined should get us to the 24, it'll be close. Rates have changed a little bit since December, but we're still anticipating, if not exactly 24, then very close to that. So the next steps, going through our list, we had the documents approved back in December. At that time, we had a preliminary official statement, which is the document that goes to the bond buying public for them to look at. And it was in sort of draft form at that point. In December, we applied for a bond rating with Standard & Poor's, went through the rating process with them, gave them a presentation, and talked about all the good things that are attached to this credit, mainly the fact that the district is very obviously mature. When Standard & Poor's usually looks at CFD districts, they are projects that are to be built. So this is an unusual project. So they were very excited and gave us a very good bond rating of AA-, which was a home run, we thought. One of the items we talked about early on was the fact that if we get a good rating, we might not need bond insurance. Typically, the bond insurance is for issuers that might have a lower rating, initial rating on their bonds. The bond insurer itself is rated AA. So your rating is AA-. If we purchase bond insurance, that only bumps us up one category. So we really don't need it, although Mike had some discussions with a bond insurer just in case. I'll let him talk some more about that. But at this point, I think we're anticipating we'll just go out to the public with the rating only and not the bond insurance. So we got the rating. We finalized the preliminary official statement with that rating on the front of it. And it was posted last week, meaning that it's out to the general public. They can look at it. They can decide whether they want to purchase the bonds separately. And I know we had talked about this early on. We worked with Nikki to get information out in an email blast to residents of the district to give them preference if they are interested in purchasing the bonds. So it's another way to support the library, as they would actually be a bond buyer. So that's an opportunity they can take. A phone number was given and information about how to set up an account and purchase those bonds. The bond sale itself will be on the 17th, so next week. Prior to that, I'll be working with Mike and Nikki on a range of interest rates where we think rates are going to be. We'll set sort of a expected interest rate schedule, and then on the day of pricing, Mike and his underwriters will work hard to meet or exceed those rates. Typically, they do a good job of getting those bonds out, and we may see some improvement. But anyways, that's the timing. Next week on Wednesday, we'll have a pre-pricing call and talk about expected interest rates. Thursday morning on the 17th, we'll have the actual bond sale, and that's basically when the rates are set, sort of locked in at that point. And it won't be just one rate. We'll have a whole range depending on the term of the bonds. There'll be shorter terms that have smaller rates, and then the long-term bonds will have higher rates. Why don't I take a break? I'm going to let Mike sort of chime in on his expected process for next week and maybe a little more information about the bond insurance.
Yeah, thanks, Doug, and good afternoon, everyone. Can everyone hear me okay?
Sure
Great.
can.
So yeah, we got the rating, a AA- rating, which is probably better than 95% of CFDs, right? I'm very bullish. So I'll even say, I think you should have got a better rating, which is unheard of, a AA, but the AA- is very strong. So that's the rating. We're out talking to it. My trading underwriting desk, who ultimately will be responsible for putting interest rates on the bonds, proposing interest rates, loves the credit. We don't see credits like this. It's a very strong credit, so we're excited. That being said, interest rates are continuing to rise. Our markets are, we've seen tremendous, we gauge supply and demand on, we look at a lot of things, but one of the major indicators is the tax exempt mutual funds. I think 51 weeks out of 2021, there were inflows into the mutual funds. We've seen an exodus in the last couple of weeks, 3 weeks, of billions of dollars leaving those funds, which is unusual, granted, given the very positive rate we've seen in the last year. So in theory, that means there's less demand. So we also see less supply. Last year, there was a less supply, huge demand. So rates that we looked at in November and even December have changed. The market's changed a little bit. Interest rates have changed. So as Doug had mentioned, when we had a not to exceed dollar amount, interest rates are up 50 basis points since then. So I was looking at numbers earlier and, because of that cap, we're probably only going to get up to 23.5, somewhere $1 million and short of the 24 million, I think. And we're working on that. There's mechanisms we could do to get more proceeds, and we're exploring those. We started that process today. But the idea is to kind of come to a conclusion. I talked to Nikki and I sent an email around yesterday about, I contacted the bond insurer. In this crazy market, we think there could be some generally you would never insure a AA minus to get to a AA, right? That usually doesn't pay off, but in the market flux we're in right now, there's buyers who can only buy AA or better. There's buyers who will only buy insured and otherwise. So to keep everyone involved, we wanted to have the opportunity to use bond insurance. I don't know, we're kind of, it's flippant whether it's cost effective or not. And we probably won't really know until day of pricing. And that cost is like $150,000, give or take. So using that may take money away from the project fund, which is another something I need to talk to Nikki and Doug about to see I don't want the tail wagging the dog, right? But I want to do the best thing possible for the district. So there's a couple questions that are kind of still out there, at least for me. But the market, I'm very confident you're going to have a lot of buyers. As I was telling Nikki in emails, we do want residents to participate. The concerns are, I personally think there'll be such high demand that we're going to do an order period. The order period is usually 2 hours. So it's probably 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. on Thursday, February 17th. And during that order period, all orders come in. We could get $500 million in orders for your 20 million in bonds, right? So obviously we're not gonna be able to fill all those orders, and that's a great problem to have. But my concern would be and this is going back to the residents, is if we have all this demand for the bonds, we're gonna likely have buyers for all of it. And in that 2 hour period, we're gonna have to, some buyers won't get what they want. And if you don't get an order in during that 2 hour period, generally speaking, all the bonds will be spoken to. So that being said, if we know that there's a demand from residents, I'm going to ask for my desk to put aside bonds just for those issuers or just for those buyers. But we need to know who they are and if they really are there. Because by regulations, when I offer a public offering, I have to open up to everyone. I can't, put some aside for this guy because he's a friend or whatnot. So it's a careful line I've got to walk in order to accomplish that. And it can be accomplished, but I would need, and I've told Nikki this, residents to set up an account. You can't buy these bonds from us without having an account with us. And that goes for everyone. That goes for Nuveen or, a retired person in Altadena. So that was, I tried to make that clear, and I think we have. And I told Nikki, if there's any questions at all, give them my number. I'll talk to anyone and everyone any time of day to explain all this to them. And please feel free to use my phone number out for anyone that has questions about it. We have fielded a couple people have called. I know someone in the Rotary maybe got involved, and we want to offer this, and we're going to call it a priority. So all your residents have retail priority. So if they put it in order, we'll guarantee to fill that order before anyone else, right? So that's priority. We're even going to do priority for residents outside of Altadena. Originally, we thought, well, they'll have to provide us with when they open up an account with a zip code that's in Altadena. I think what we're going to do is just open up for any residents in California. What we find, generally speaking, is there may be 200, 300,000 in bonds, maybe only 30,000 in bonds that retail will buy. And it really depends, right? We've seen all different spectrums, but I have very, very confident they won't even buy a full maturity. And so when we offer these bonds, we'll offer them with multiple maturities. There'll be a 1 year maturity out to, I think we have it out to 15 years, and there'll probably be a 20, a 25, and a 30-year maturity. It's kind of how we have it structured right now. And all of that is a give and take. Right now, my trading desk underwriters out marketing the deal. We have the preliminary official statement, we have the rating report, and we're out talking to potential buyers. So what happens then over the next couple of days, he's talking to buyers, getting feedback, asking me questions, we're sharing ideas. And then on February 16th, we have a call set up with Nikki, and that's what we call the pre-pricing. So Hilltop will present the idea of like, here's where we think rates are and why, right? It's about a 20-minute presentation. I believe some, or maybe not all you are eligible, but some of you can join that call. Nikki has the contact information. And at that call, we talk about, here's where we think we are, here's other comparable deals, here's why our pricing is what it is. We lay it out like that. Doug and Nikki and the district will say, okay, Mike, that sounds good, but what, why is that, why is that rate higher than this one? And okay, hey, yeah, that makes sense. Maybe we can lower that. So there's a little give and take and all that. But we do this all the time. So we're pretty good at this, presenting ideas, but then, we'll put our money where our mouth is, so to speak, the next day. So we get those rates approved around noon on Wednesday. We'll shoot that out to investors and say, hey, we're going to go into the market the next morning at 8 a.m. Pacific time. We'll take orders for 2 hours, submit your orders. And during that time, we find out how close we are to the market. If we're right on the market, then we'll get, $21 million in orders. If maybe we were too aggressive, we maybe not get enough orders, we may have to come back and reprice the deal. What we seen all of last year was we would get $100 million in orders on $20 million in bonds, and we come back and we lower rates for the benefit of the district. In a perfect financing, that's what happens. But I got to tell you, interest rates are so volatile right now, and the market is very strange. We just don't know. I'm very bullish on the credit. I know my underwriting desk is too. I think the rating is too low for you, even though it's an incredible rating. So I guess maybe I'm a little more bullish than everyone else, but that's a lot of information I spit at you. So I'll take a minute to answer questions.
One comment I'll add: when we talk with Mike and Nikki on Wednesday, we'll have a list of comparable sales for other AA- rated deals that have been sold recently. So that'll be another benchmark which we'll look at to compare the proposed rates to. So that's part of the process. Yes.
So I shared with someone that these bonds were being sold, and their question was, what is the yield? And I guess what I'm hearing you guys say is there'll be a variety, because there'll be a variety of sizes of the bonds in terms of the bonds. So so for the average citizen, so when you say they can buy bonds, like what quantity, what's the smallest quantity you're entertaining in a resident order?
The minimum denomination is $5,000. It may be a minimum amount to open up account, maybe 10,000. I don't know. I'm not on that side, but the minimum denom is $5,000. And I'm looking at kind of where my interest rate scale right now. And you think about it, you buy a 1-year maturity, it's going to have a lot lower yield than a 30-year maturity. So we range from 83 basis points to 260 basis points, from top to bottom. So there's various rates. And so what we do is we find buyers, generally speaking, most retail buyers say, I want the highest yielding thing you have, which is the 30-year. So they'll get a yield to maturity, 3%, somewhere in that range, unless the bonds are called.
So by the 16th, they have to have called, set up an account, and I assume deposited that either 5 or 10, at least 5 or 10 with you guys.
They don't have to deposit anything. So what we find is, and it's a good question, is that, hey, what are interest rates? Well, I don't know what interest rates are, right? This is the process we go through. So what happens is the sales guy, what should happen is I'm a resident, I call Hilltop, I set up an account that I'm assigned a retail broker. That retail broker calls me that morning between 8 and 10 and said, okay, here's the bonds that are available. What maturity do you want? Do you want a 1-year maturity, a 5-year, a 10-year, 15, 20, 25? 30? You want the highest yield possible, and so they pick and choose from that. And every buyer is going to be a little different, right? But I find retail buyers generally want the highest yield possible, and usually that's always the longest maturity.
So I think I saw that the email went out to the public. I get the kind of automated Altadena Library information. So do you know if anyone set up an account yet?
I know we've had calls. I don't know if an account has been set up now. But I can find that out. That's just an email.
Thanks.
I have a question about, are there any restrictions on who can purchase? For instance, are trustees exempt from buying?
No, I do not believe they are. What will happen, and again, I'm not a broker, but they open an account. So, and this being a AA, I don't know why there would be a restriction. So a broker can only sell it to, he's got a fiduciary duty to make sure that investment is responsible for whatever your needs are. So there would be, it might be a restriction on that side. And again, it's the other side of the company. I'm not familiar with that, but again, this being AA, I think it's fine. But if you're set up an account and, for instance, you have a life expectancy of a year, I don't think you're allowed to buy 30-year bonds. But again, I'm not on that side of the equation. That's a wild if.
Just thinking out loud, if one of you on this call were interested in purchasing the bonds, I would suggest not being on the pricing call we're going to have on Thursday, just for appearance sakes.
Wise.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, and Nikki, I think you had a comment to your hand raised.
Yeah, I don't know if Mike understood the question. I think Terry was wondering if, since they sit on our board of trustees, if they're eligible.
Yeah, if there's a conflict, yeah, I don't think there's a conflict.
Okay.
There isn't from my perspective, from Hilltop's perspective.
It sounds like something we might want to run past our council.
Yeah, I just made a note.
Yeah, because you have approved, I mean, you've approved the financing, but you don't necessarily approve the rates. But anyway, that's a BB&K district council question.
Thank you.
Hey, Mike, going back to your comments about bond insurance, obviously with this type of rating, it's very strong. It may preclude certain entities from buying, but based on this rating and your perspective, you feel we'll more than likely have more buyers than the amount that we have to sell. So do you foresee anything changing between now and the 17th that you think that we would want to get insurance? And if so, what would that be?
Yeah, the bond insurance, I sent Doug and Nikki around numbers. Generally speaking, we wouldn't think there's much value, the difference between a AA and a AA minus. But right now, the market's so choppy, is how my underwriter describes it, that he calculated that spread at 10 basis points difference between the two. And if 10 basis points, which makes the break even basically what the bond insurance quoted, right? So it's a wash. Our numbers actually showed bond insurance saved you, I think it was $3,000 a year, 3,000, right? In the scheme of things, it was, a fraction of a percent. But that's based on, it's hard to quantify the market like that. So what's happening right now is my desk is out talking to buyers saying, hey, we've got this deal. We also have bond insurance. What are your thoughts? And I kind of told them, hey, Bill, Bill's my underwriter. If an insured rate is more than, if bond insurance saves you 10 basis points, it's a break even. But, someone maybe say, I don't want bond insurance, the yield doesn't change. In that case, yeah, we wouldn't use bond insurance. So I've kind of asked it to be a fluid process, right? I know we didn't talk about bond insurance before. I didn't think it was needed. Normally in a regular market, it's not needed, but it's a little different right now.
Thank you for that.
Another quick, go ahead, Rushmore, sorry.
No, go ahead. Good.
Just another point of understanding, I guess, for me, it's unlikely, hearing you talk, that we would not sell all the bonds, but if there is an adjustment that needs to be made, it's done in pricing during that 2-hour or whatever window, right?
Yeah, that's a good question, Terry. Thank you. What would happen, and I've seen this happen before, right? It's not unusual, is say we sell 19 million, right? And there's $2 million left over. What we do and what we've done in the past is say, okay, hey, district, we're confident we can sell these bonds. We're confident in our interest rates. We're going to take that risk. So we then say, we'll what we call underwrite the bonds, right? We'll take the risk. We'll sign a purchase contract. We'll lock in these rates. Market moves, we lose money, then it's us, not you. What could also happen is we could come back and say, hey, the market moves so much that we need to move interest rates a little higher to catch up to the market, right? Say the day of pricing, and we've seen this occasionally and a couple times in the last month, we wake up to some economic news or something that comes out and moves the market right away 10 basis points. That changes everything, right? So we've already lost 10 basis points. We wanted to be aggressive. Now we're 10 basis points under. You know, we may not get any orders. If that's the case, usually I call Doug and we get a Nikki and say, hey, something happened in the market. It's moved to 10 basis points. Here's what our thought is. So we don't get caught in that situation, but it happens. But our job, and one of the reasons why you hired us, is we have capital to underwrite the deal and do that for our clients.
Mike, could you briefly describe to people that are on the meeting the extraordinary call provision discussion we were having the other day?
Yeah. So originally we went through this whole dialogue on because there's tax exempt rules that you have to spend all the money. We weren't sure how much money we were going to spend, and we were running at different sizes. And one of the solutions I said is, hey, we can do what we call an extraordinary call. So we'll issue bonds. We were going to fund 24 million. What if they only spend 2 million or 23 million or whatever the number is? Under those circumstances, you know, there may be some tax issues if you don't spend the proceeds. So one of my solution was we could do an extraordinary call, which means at the end of that period, the 3-year period, I think it's 4 years actually. If you determine we're not going to spend any more money, and we have this leftover proceeds, what happens to that? Originally, I said, let's do an extraordinary call where the buyers would take the risk, right? I'm a buyer of the bonds. You have the right to call those bonds if you don't spend all the money. But I'm buying the bonds. All these bonds are being priced at a premium, right? We're generating a premium. So the extraordinary call had the right to call those bonds at par, right? So I'm a buyer. You have the right to call those bonds away from me in 3 or 4 years and I take a loss. In order to sell those bonds to investors, there's a slight premium in the pricing. So what I concluded was, and after talking to committees and the board and whatnot, is that I got the impression that 24 million it was unlikely you weren't going to spend less. I'll just say it that way. And if it was less, it wasn't going to be significant. So my thought was, and what we agreed to was drop that extraordinary premium because it was a cost. And I think my numbers were up to $400,000 over the life of the issue. It could cost the district. And I thought, well, why should they pay that premium if they're unlikely to use it? And so my solution is instead of calling bonds, we just take that money. Instead of calling the bonds, they make a payment. It basically goes as a credit towards the next payment. So it would be a credit to all the property owners, and they wouldn't have to pay as much in that following year. So that's kind of where we ended up. So now any excess proceeds would then be transferred to the debt service fund, which would offset any charges to residents.
Thank you for that, Mike.
Yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, it's fine. You explained it perfectly and appreciate that. It just, the important thing to note is that this is consistent with the intentions and of the board as far as the utilization of any excess bond proceeds. So it's just a cheaper way to achieve the same thing, saving dollars for the taxpayers and maximize bond issuance.
Well said. Yeah, I agree with that. That's well said.
All right, maybe finishing up next steps, assuming all goes well, and we anticipate that it will on Thursday for the pricing. On that day, we will have bond purchase contract signed. And then after that, Best and Krieger will assemble final documents, and it'll be about 2 more weeks before we have the actual closing. So sometime about a week after the pricing, a giant package of documents will be presented to the district for signatures. And that'll be the closing package. All those documents will go back to BB&K. And then the closing will occur on March 3rd. That's when Hilltop will actually purchase the bonds. And then the proceeds will be available in the project fund to the district on that day. Any questions about that?
But it locks in that closing is a formality, but the rates and the premiums and everything are already locked in doing that.
That's correct. Yeah. On the day of pricing, we'll have the bond purchase contract, which is a separate document from the closing documents, will be signed that day. It'll be executed that day with
Okay.
all the rates and terms.
So people that bought bonds should expect, and we might get questions about this, that they wouldn't get any documentation or paperwork until after the 3rd when things settle down, right?
Yeah,
Mike,
yeah, their money, I meant to answer this earlier, their money wouldn't be due. So if they make an order during the order period, then I think their money's due at closing, not anytime sooner. So I think it's March 3rd is our closing date, right?
Yeah.
So if they buy bonds, then that money, then they got to fund that account by March 3rd to get those bonds put in their account.
Okay, thank you. I have a comment, I guess, and it kind of ties into the conversation. That was this morning in the LA Times. There was a full-page ad from Pinion and Walsh about the advantages of buying bonds that are secured with public funds and infrastructure problems or projects especially. So I just thought that's a sign of something. I've never seen a full-page ad like that at the time before. So is that a nature or is that a statement, I guess, about the volatility of the market right now and somebody thinking ahead, trying to make sure they have buyers?
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't know. I haven't seen a full page ad, I don't think ever in the LA Times. That's unusual, but I know we see we got brokers that do CNBC ads, little quick 30-second ads, and we do print ads occasionally for deals in different papers. But I don't know. I can't comment on that one specifically.
Okay, yeah, it was a
Bond
good ad.
market is fixed income in general, right? You've seen treasury rates go up. The 10-year treasury rates probably about 2%. 3 or 4 months ago was 130. I mean, so bond rates haven't gone that fast, but they're on their way. They're moving. They're a little slower, but they're moving that way.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, Doug, going back to the March 3rd date, the closing, so the bond proceeds would be available to the district the next day, or when would they be available?
yeah, I would say the next day. There's a process, sort of a requisition process. The trustee will hold the project fund. So you
Got
will send in.
And refresh my memory, those bond proceeds will be placed in what type of an account?
At the time of closing, it'll be held in trustee money market accounts. I have talked to Nikki about getting a construction fund bid after we close, so we can talk some more about that. In the bond indenture that was approved, there are a set of approved investments that you can invest the project fund in, and it's generally safe type of investment. So we have sort of a limited menu of things, but they would provide a better rate than the trustees overnight money market fund. So we will certainly work with you on that.
Great, thank you.
Is the U.S. bank interface that we have, is that the one that sort of handles the money then and gets into an account and so on?
They will hold all of the project funds as well as any other debt service funds that you'll be making for the semi-annual payments. So yes, all of the bond related funds go through them.
Okay, but their investments, the short-term investments go on our recommendation, right? Is that how that works?
Yes, they will have you sign something at closing that is sort of a default that upon with no direction, they default to their own money market funds. But you can certainly change that at any time. It's a little bit easier to do it after closing, so we're going to wait, and then we can talk about what type of, hopefully a guaranteed investment contract, which they are out there for project funds, and we can hope to get a decent yield on that for you.
Okay, thanks.
I did email Mernal with BBK to ask her about the trustees being able to purchase bonds, and she's not sure if it's a conflict of interest. It may be. So we'll get you that answer as soon as we have it.
Thank you.
Yep.
Are there any more questions from the committee?
I have no more.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much, Mike and Doug. That was a fire hose of information. I'm still processing a couple of questions. I'll get back to you on that.
Yeah, yeah, please do. Please do. And Terry, I'll set aside some bonds for you. You just let me know how many you need.
Okay.
Million, couple 100,000.
I think he's good for at least $500,000.
Just ha-
Well, the whole thing sounds a little bit like a cage fight. I keep imagining those frenetic New York Stock Exchange floors and people running back and forth. But I'm glad we've got some talented professionals at the helm on this one.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, as I told Nikki, is we want to make sure that you and your residents' needs are met. So, I have rules I got to work with, but I'm experienced enough to try to find crevices to get through to accomplish what you guys need.
Yeah, no, and you both are very good about presenting the facts and so on. So thank you very much for your clarity there.
And just so everybody is aware, well, Terry is aware too, we're going to be presenting to the Altadena Town Council on Tuesday night, this same presentation, basically, to spread the word. That'll give people another day to set up an account if they so choose to. Yeah, I emailed this, the e-blast that went out to all of them individually, as well as some of our other organizations. So hopefully the word has spread.
I will make a note too that we do have existing clients in the city. So they should have all been notified of an upcoming issue. If the broker's doing their job anyway, they should have. I can't speak for them. I don't know their business plan, but that's protocol internally. So they may be getting word even without you knowing they're getting word.
That's excellent.
And then following up on that timing aspect, Nikki, I'm glad you brought that up. The meeting is going to be on the 15th, I think.
Yeah, Tuesday night.
February. So that's only 2 days prior to the point that they need to get an account made. And is there anything that we could show them or tell them that would help speed up their efficiency in getting things set up with the account?
No, I mean, we were just provided the local broker that they call to set up the account.
Okay.
And they'll have through the end of the next day to do it. So, and I mean, it does seem like limited time, but we really couldn't go out to the public till we had the preliminary official statement like nailed down, which was last Friday afternoon. So, hopefully the word has spread for those that would like to purchase funds for our libraries.
Okay, good. All right, then I think we're done with this part of the presentation, right, Nikki? There was a final item on.
Mike, did you have something?
No, I want to say goodbye. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Thanks, Mike.
All right, yep.
Bye, Mike.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Mike and Doug, appreciate it. There was that final item, Nikki, on the agenda about what the next steps would be, or actually it was proposed and featured agenda items. And I don't have any notes or anything. Did you have some thoughts on that yourself?
Not really. I just want to get through the bond issuance, and then we'll see what there will be to bring to. There might be more information, the results of the issuance process, where we're at in terms of the proceeds, and then potentially some of those questions that Doug raised about how we are going to invest the money in the trust bank. So maybe something like that next month too.
But really, the heavy lifting for the committee's been done by screening all the vendors and getting the contracts approved by the board, et cetera. The rhythm that we've been in on the last few months is, I think we met last in October. I think we had another meeting in there somewhere. But it sounds like this might change a little bit from a monthly obligation to more like a quarterly or every couple of months. Does that sound about right to you too?
I think so. I think we'll have a better sense of like how often we need to review the proceeds, where we're at in terms of the spending. And I do foresee something like quarterly, similar to like the budget committee. So
I don't have a sense yet about what type of ongoing paperwork we're going to need to file as a community facilities district, to the government agencies and so on. So I guess there'll be that to bake into it, but I don't know much about that yet.
Yeah, I would think it's similar to what we've done in the past with the special tax, the parcel tax. where the board has to vote to approve the rate each year before the fiscal year starts.
Okay,
I would assume it's something like that, and we'll be doing our annual disclosures, but we did hire NBS, and they're gonna guide us through all of that. Just so CFD committee is aware, I've been working with NBS to put together a mailer that's gonna go out to all property tax owners, probably in the beginning of April, that informs them about what the special tax lien is, because they're gonna be seeing that in next year's property tax roll. And then potentially anyone who qualifies for the low income tax exemption, how they can do so. And just providing information to get a little bit ahead of it, because I'm sure many people have no idea it's coming. So
are we getting calls already about, taxes and so on, things that have to be handled?
I don't know if we've mentioned this in the past, but the notice of special tax lien was filed in the end of January last year. So January 2021. And the only real impact that's had thus far is anyone that was buying, selling, or refinancing property in Altadena had to get documentation from NBS that this lien didn't need to be paid against their property. So pretty much every call we've got were people that were refinancing or buying or selling property because their title company needed that documentation to explain that it's not a traditional lien and they didn't owe money to anybody. So I do think we'll see an uptick in calls when the tax rolls go out and people see this new tax on their bill. But that's why we have a CFD administration firm. So they've been pretty much fielding most of those questions for us.
So I think there is sort of an ongoing, taxpayer satisfaction element to,
Yes.
and maybe even incorporate into our meetings going forward about other complaints or special problems or things that we as an entity need to help them out with. So, okay, good.
Yeah, and my marketing specialist, Bryn, is working on a nice consolidated landing page that will include information about the building projects, where they're at historically and up to date, but also information on what is Measure Z, what is the special tax lien, what is a community facilities district, so that like if you as CFD committee members or my staff or town council members have residents with questions, they could start on that page, and it's going to be like a wealth of up-to-date information for them. So I think that will help a lot as well.
Okay, great.
Mhm.
It'd be really interesting to see the financials the first time it reflects approximately $24 million on the balance sheet. So I think that will be a very important either a budget meeting slash meeting with the Board of Trustees to see how the money is reflected in our balance sheet. And of course, with that, we'll have that discussion about how the money is being saved at this point, earning interest, what vehicles is being it's saved in. So that'll be a very exciting conversation. But at the same time, kind of honoring our commitment for full transparency, so they can see the segregation of those funds and how we're going to account for them on a go-forward basis. So very important for that first conversation post deposit of those funds, that we show exactly how this is going to go be managed on a go-forward basis.
For sure. I think it helps a lot that we've separated out a fund for the board to see in terms of what the revenue is and expenditures, which
Agreed.
That sheet will just grow as we continue spending the money in different ways on the projects, for sure.
Right.
Sorry, Kim, we keep cutting you off.
No. And this is just more of a formality. So it's actually been a year since I guess the community members joined this committee, and it's just flown by. But can you remind me, did we have set terms? Was there an end date to our role? Because I'm not sure I remember.
I believe when we put the application out, it was for a 2-year commitment, because we figured we'd get through most of this process within those first 2 years. But we believe the CFD committee will continue on. So we'll probably towards the end of this year open it up again. I'm sure if you wanted to continue serving, you could, or we could open it up to other community members.
I just couldn't remember what I had signed up for. And, I'm going
Well, then it's 10 years. It's 10 years.
I'm going to throw this out. I'm wondering if the other community members, if it's time to take the pulse, if they want to continue, this only because I know this seems, we're having a lack of attendance, is how I'll say it as politely as I can. So, maybe this was the part they were most interested in, and going forward it's not, but I think to Terry's point, we won't be meeting as often. So maybe just wanted to mention that.
No, I appreciate it. We did ask a lot of the community members on this committee to work on hiring the full bond issuance team last year. So I don't foresee the same amount of time or work involved moving forward. So, but yes, we will see how they're feeling too. I know Amy's very busy.
So we should expect maybe when the dust settles on all of the money transfer and the sale and everything, and we regroup and talk about it and determine the rhythm of the committee after that. Okay, good. That's kind of, Kim and I think we're going to the same place, and that is, do you still need us? And of course we do, but on what terms and how's it going to work? So.
Yeah, and that's why many of our last few months of meetings have been canceled, because we really are trying our best to not have meetings just for the sake of having meetings, but because we have these like touch points or inflection points where we really need feedback and input, and to share out the information of all the things that are all the balls in the air right now.
Yeah. And it's been important work. It's really going to make a difference, obviously, to the library. So, all right, if there's nothing else, then say it's time to adjourn. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
I'll move.
I'll second.
Okay, great. If there's no objections, hearing none, I'll go ahead and adjourn the meeting at 3:48 p.m. And thanks again, everybody, for all your hard work. It really is appreciated. Now it's a very exciting time, so let's see what happens in the next few weeks.
Thank you, Doug. Thank you, Nikki.
Thanks, guys.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.